and welcome to the September edition of EdTech Monday. Now, EdTech Monday is a platform for EdTech entrepreneurs, education stakeholders, and government reps to facilitate critical conversations on the use of technology for teaching and learning. Now, the show is an initiative of the MasterCard Foundation's Regional Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning in ICT, and it's part of the foundation's strategy to find solutions to Africa's youth employment by closing the gap in access to quality education and advancing the integration of tech in education policies and practices across Africa. Now, EdTech Monday builds on the foundation's Young Africa Work strategy in Ghana with the vision of harnessing opportunities to shape the future of work and to create an inclusive economy with enhanced resilience for young people and the most vulnerable, especially women, by 2030. Now, to realize this vision, MasterCard Foundation has partnered with West Africa to bring you EdTech Monday, airing on the last Monday of every month, like this morning. You can catch the show live on the Citi Breakfast Show or watch us live on Facebook via Citi 97.3 FM or West Africa. My name is Nathan Kwao. Now, today we are talking acceleration digital literacy to benefit educational systems in Ghana. Now, Africa's demand for education is projected to increase with nearly 750 million children expected to be of school-going age by 2060. Now, the global ranking of the Digital Skills Gap Index 2021 places Ghana in the 95th position with a 3.6 score out of a listing of 134 countries. Now, with the current educational system at capacity, an increase in cohorts of children and young people presents a significant fiscal pressure on government in terms of service delivery needs and sustained investment in accessible and quality education. So this morning, we're talking about the initiatives that are, that have been implemented on the continent and in Ghana to accelerate digital literacy to benefit education systems and human capital development. Now, to do that, I have three great people who know their tech. I have Amasaki, who's a growth and marketing lead at ALX Ghana. And Ama is a growth marketing lead at ALX. She's deeply passionate about driving conversations that positively impact Africa, and she firmly believes that the African youth do have the superpowers to bring things to the continent. She likes art and she enjoys crafting stories for kids. Wonderful. Ama, good morning. Welcome to EdTech Monday.
Good morning, Nathan. Thank you for having me.
All right. Our second panelist is Adjoa Fosua Owusu-Fori. She's Executive Director, Women's Haven Africa. Now, she's a leading figure in Ghana's tech industry and a role model for women in tech and entrepreneurship. She founded Women's Haven Africa in Kumasi in 2019, and that entity is dedicated to empowering women with training, mentorship, and financial support for tech-driven entrepreneurship aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, some of our joint achievements include winning accolades like the overall Best Hub and Best Startup Support Organization at the 2021 Ghana Startup Awards. Her impact reaches globally, touching multiple countries, reflecting her commitment to gender equality and Africa's future. Now, Joan aspires to inspire young African women with dreams, and she wants to be a catalyst for change. And she's joining us online. Now, if you can hear me, good morning. Welcome to EdTech Monday.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. And our third panel member is Winnie Jidonu. She's Senior Manager Digital Platforms, MTN Ghana. Now, she's a Senior Manager for Digital Platforms at MTN with 10 years of experience in product development. She has an extensive background in logistics, mobile money, and telecommunications. And Winnie is passionate about building innovative products and services that will drive digital transformation in the African market. Now, with her expertise in driving product roadmaps, leading product teams, and managing complex projects, she's been able to deliver exceptional results. And Winnie is a firm believer in customer-centric design and strives to create solutions that are tailored to the user's needs. Winnie, good morning. Welcome to EdTech Monday.
Good morning.
Thank you all for joining us. And to our listeners, you can also send in your thoughts and comments on the number 0549 986 996. You can also drop comments on our Facebook page. We'll try to go through as many of them as possible. All right, let's get the ball rolling. Let me get to Ajwa first. She's joining us via online or via Zoom. Ajwa, thank you so much for joining us once again. Let's start off with you. Let's get your general thoughts on digital literacy for education in Ghana and whether or not Ghanaian schools have a digital divide in relation to other African countries and maybe in relation to the rest of the world.
All right, thank you very much. So, good morning to all the listeners, and I'm happy to be here today. So, I just want to start by saying that, digital literacy now is no longer a luxury, it's actually become a necessity. And we know that digital literacy is actually a fourth literacy. And as we speak, it has become very necessary to talk about in education. Although we know that reading, writing, mathematics, and all that are respected as the basis of being literate, but literacy in this state is not complete if a person is not capable of assessing and creating digital information. If a person is not digitally inclined, then literacy in itself is not even complete. We all understand the role education plays in our economy, the role education plays in our nation. And we realize that education is one of the important vehicles that drives the economic development and even human welfare of a nation. And therefore, it's very important to know that, our educational system is changing. The educational environment is changing. The diverse educational needs of students, high expectations from the public, even the work environment that requires employees or a skill force that is digitally inclined, and even periodic policy reports that demands educational change, not only even at the educational system level, but also at the school-based level in local and international context. Now we realize that digital literacy is not just merely a skill. It's actually a cornerstone for educational progress in Ghana. We are looking at heading towards 2030. And when you look at the SDG goals, we realize that the future of work by 2030 is digital. And that tells us, or that informs us, that we cannot get there without getting our people digitally inclined.
Okay.
Ghanaian students, like those in many countries, are all using digital tools for everything, from accessing educational resources online to collaborating with their peers. Even as I'm speaking right now, I am making use of a digital platform. And that tells you that there is a need for us to look at the changing scenes of our environment and our ecosystem now to ensure that we are inculcating digital literacy, we are inculcating literacy, not just around reading, mathematics, and writing, but then people are digitally inclined. Now, back to Ghana as a nation, like many other African countries,
Okay.
we are facing a digital divide, which is very, very evident. Now, when it comes to Ghana, we are looking at the urban rural gap, where we have young people, young boys and girls in rural areas who do not even have access to digital tools. Not to talk about access to internet for them to be able to bridge that gap. We are looking at all of these disparities, even in internet access. Now, according to the Alliance for Affordable Internet, this issue is not unique to Ghana, and it even extends across Africa to other African countries. And it's therefore essential for us to recognize that while Ghana is making progress, there is still much work to be done. I remember a project with West Africa about 2 years ago, which was on the Premise Digital Marketing Program, where we trained close to about 120 women in digital marketing. Now, these were young women who were unemployed.
Okay.
We are looking at our tech ecosystem and looking at the gap when it comes to the skill set of young people. Young people completing school and they do not match up with the skills that employers require just because they are not digitally inclined. And so therefore, this particular project enhanced the skills of these over 120 women to be digitally inclined and connects them to employment. On a global scale, the digital divide still persists, with many developed countries having greater access to digital resources and infrastructure. Bridging this gap is essential to ensure that even Ghanaian students have access to the same educational opportunities as their global peers. So I'll just end by saying the same word I said again, that digital literacy now in the educational system is no more a luxury, but it is a necessity.
Thank you so much, Ajua. You've laid the ground brilliantly for us. Winnie, let me get your thoughts on what educational challenges that does digital literacy solve. If we crack that one, what are we solving in terms of education?
A great question. And just saying good morning to everyone and thanks for having me here.
Welcome.
So, definitely, when you think about what educational problems digital literacy solves, that's a question, right?
Yeah.
So, when you think about education today, from every level, you have things on the internet, right? So, Adra spoke about earlier persons in rural areas. They
Yes.
may not have access to even physical schools. If they have access to even just a mobile phone, they can access educational information. So, for example, I manage Ayoba. We have free data with Ayoba.
Okay.
So, even if you don't have like you don't have a lot of money, but you just want to learn a little bit, we have a partnership with Oxford University where we provide literacy training in that partnership on Ayoba. So there are videos. So let's say you can't read and write yet. You just want to listen, watch, learn. So firstly, it solves the issues that we're going to have in terms of education, access to education at every level. I have a 6-year old that learns everything on YouTube. When he goes to school, everybody's like, "Oh, how do you know these big words?" YouTube. Then we talk about not just education, but when you're talking about entrepreneurship or employment. So you talk about entrepreneurship. If you're a farmer, let's say you're a farmer, you need to know weather patterns.
Yeah.
Things are changing. Like it's not the same. Everyone plants at the same time and it rains at the same time because of climate change. Things are changing, and if you don't have access to that information, even if it's not through the internet, there are services that uses SMS that can tell you what the weather is going to be at any specific time.
Okay.
So having access and understanding even how to use those devices to know, okay, when can I grow my crops? What can I do? What can I change? That's super important. So that's also solving there. And then we go to employment. So a lot of jobs are now online. They're remote work.
Yeah.
And if you don't have access and know how to use these tools, Amma will talk about the different trainings. But if you don't have access and know how to use the basic devices, so that's one of the things that we do at MTN. When we sell you the cell phone, the smartphone, we go through with the agent to say, okay, this is how you start, this is how you go, this is how you download apps. So we want to actually bridge that small gap if you have it, so that when you are now on the internet, you now have the devices, you can use it to access information at anywhere possible.
I see. Amma, let me bring you in. You've been quiet. You've been listening to Winnie and Najwa. Just talk to us about what a digital literacy training or class would look like in the most unconducive environment, and what skills are taught, and how do we measure success? How do we know that people are picking up these skills that we are teaching them?
Okay, thank you so much for the question, and good morning, everybody. In an unconducive environment, I think there won't be digital infrastructure. And when I say digital infrastructure, I'm talking about internet. I'm talking about the devices that are relevant for you to get online, right? And I think there's a very typical example of a Ghanaian teacher that had to draw the computer to teach his students, and then he was digitally literate, right? He knew social media skills, and then he posted it online. It went viral, and Microsoft saw it, and he got rewarded for it. But that's not the case for teachers in the rural areas, right? So in an unconducive environment, that would be one. And then two, it will be that there's no real world application. I've been told, and I learned that in the new GS curriculum, there's the class, I think class 5, the class 5 students will be required to learn coding using Scratch, a software called Scratch. And I'm thinking about how this will go for people in the rural areas, right? So in an unconducive environment, it's just going to be like, okay, let's code. They show you how to code on the blackboard, but it's like you won't be able to apply it physically, And
there's a gap between what you are learning and
exactly
a real problem.
Exactly. And then the other one too would be sometimes like there's a curriculum, right? But the curriculum is not up to date. So here we are teaching kids how to use the computer, how to search for information online, basics of social media, basics of email marketing. And then their colleagues in the other parts of the world are learning like the advanced. They are learning things like cloud computing, machine learning, and AI, and of course, we are trying to do coding, right? But machine learning, AI, data analytics, and you realize that there's going to be like a disparity between the two people and the two groups of people, and we are training our students to compete on a global level, and that's not going to happen, right? And looking at the success measures, like if you're going to measure the success of digital literacy, I think the first thing is to look at like have a national digital literacy index, right? And we have to have like an agenda that promotes that, and so every year we have to make sure that okay, we are improving. And one way to do that is to create awareness. I remember I didn't get arrested by a police. I got stopped by a policeman, right? And he was trying. We were having a conversation. I think he wanted to check my line, so we were having a conversation. He was like, "So what do you do?" And I said that I'm into. I mentioned the word digital. I mentioned the word technology, and he's like, "So you are the lazy people sitting behind the computer doing?" And then it just, and this is a father that is going to advise like a child in their career prospects, and I was like, wow, we have to make a conscious effort to create awareness about digital literacy, right? And another way that we can measure success is employability and economic impact. So at ALX, what we are doing is that, ALS, what we're doing is that we're trying to read world-class tech talent so that we'll be able to compete with the Indians, right? So if you're looking for tech talent, we know that we can come to Africa.
Yeah.
If there are tech jobs coming into, for instance, Google and X was in Africa, and if they came and they didn't get tech talent to take the roles, do they have to import the talent? Or are we qualified to take the tech talent, right? So that's what we're doing. And also one of the ways we can measure is success stories. At ALX, one of the things that we have is we have one of our graduates, right, who has gone ahead to employ about 6,000 people.
Wow.
And I think he's not Ghanaian. He's not Ghanaian, right? But he's using digital, like he graduated from using digital stuff to map data across Africa.
Okay.
Right? And he's employed 6,000 people. I know currently we have students that are trying to use digital solutions to solve challenges at Kolibu, solve challenges at for physically challenged people. I know we have a lot of these, so that's a way that we can also measure our success, right? So yeah, that's it, and I would end here.
Okay, all right. My next question is for you and Adjoa, and I want to find out what the general conditions need to be, or what conditions we need to meet for digital literacy to support education. So maybe you first, and then I can go on the Zoom and get address thoughts.
Okay, I think the first thing would be mindset.
Okay.
We have to we have to know that the world is changing. We have to know that we are in a new world. We have to know that even the way we do farming, Winnie was talking about farming. Like, would you have ever thought that would use technology to do farming in this way? I mean, farming, you get it. The way we do things are different. We have to shift our mindset. I also spoke about this policeman that thought that me sitting behind a computer, I was just being lazy.
You are lazy.
I'm just being lazy. So we have to shift that mindset, and that's very important. And then secondly, we need policy framework and funding. Okay. And policy framework, I know that GES has it's called the ICT Development Accelerator Framework policy, and they are moving from just showing the kids, okay, this is a computer, this is the mouse, they are moving from that to teaching the kids how to use the software. More importantly, teaching the kids how to use the software to make learning easier, right? So that's a good thing. And then also we need funding, because we just mentioned that in 2060 there will be 750 million schools.
Yes. 750 million children are supposed to be going to school by 2060.
Exactly. We need funding. It's like a whole big thing, right? So we need funding. And I love what MasterCard Foundation is doing in Africa, the work that they are doing in Africa, because even at ALX, if you want to take our courses and you're between the ages of 18 to 34, you qualify for sponsored placements, which is scholarships, right? And people wouldn't have been able to pay probably because if there wasn't if there wasn't the scholarship available. And so we need funding. We need some of these organizations to get on board too. Thank you.
Ajay, if you can hear me, same question to you. What are the general conditions we need to meet for digital literacy to support education?
All right. So just like she said, the first thing is the mindset. Because I mean, gone were the days where digital literacy wasn't a thing. Now we realize that where we are heading towards, we actually need to ensure that each and every other person is digitally inclined. Now, one of the things you talked about was funding. From where I said at Women's Haven Africa, we have a lot of young women coming through our programs, and you realize that without funding, it would not have been possible for them to go through such programs. Now, thanks to partners like the MasterCard, thanks to partners like Mest Africa, Ghana Tech Lab, who have made all of these possible. And so we have hundreds and, thousands of young women going through programs for free. And this is getting them jobs after every other thing. This is getting them remote tech jobs, even outside of Ghana. And it tells you that funding is very, very important. So what I would say is that all relevant stakeholders in the tech ecosystem need to come together to ensure that we are raising enough funds, because looking at the number of people we need to get digitally inclined, it would need us to get more funding. Now, back to the rural areas where they do not even have the physical infrastructures. We need funding to be able to get them the right infrastructure, get them the right tools. Now, the next thing is access to internet. And I also talk about we being able to afford the internet. Now, data has become very expensive. And so you even have these young women going through programs, and after the program has ended, they do not have access to internet. Now, the reliability aspect is part of it, and affordability aspect is also, I mean, a key thing to look into. If internet is not reliable, if it is not affordable, no matter what skill sets they acquire from all of these programs, they still go back to zero. Nothing happens. And so we have been training a lot more young women in data science, in business digitalization, in graphic design, and all of that. But after the program ends, what next? So I think that the developmental partners must also look at sustainability. And I'm happy Emma talked about it. We have to look at it after all of these funds have been pumped into the programs and they are done. What happens? Now, they need to also be able to access digital tools themselves. I have seen most of our programs where partners are giving us the tools, the laptop, the data, and all of that. And then the cameras, every other thing that these young people need. After the program ends, we do not have enough funds to sustain the impact. So they leave the program, and somebody who has gone through a 6-month program in digital media cannot afford a digital camera. And so what happens? They leave and then they just jump onto the next available option. So I remember a young lady who went through a program, a digital media program, and then after 6 months of intensive training, being able to acquire skills in photography and videography, they left the program, and then the next time this person was into a different field altogether. And the reason was that they do not have enough funds to acquire the needed tools. And so we have to look at how they can have access to the tools, even after all of these impacts, are made. We have to look at sustainability. Now, the other aspect I'm also interested in is being able to equip educators to be able to integrate technology into the curriculum, so that right from scratch, right from basic one, right from KG1, we have integrated technology into our educational curriculum. I remember we launched a program for kids, Canva for Kids, and we went ahead to ensure that there is some sort of partnership with some schools around our area. And I am telling you that till date, we have not even heard from any of these schools, because some of them did not even find the need to inculcate or integrate technology in this curriculum. And so right from KG1 to class 6, somebody finishes school or complete school, JHS 3, and they still cannot use Excel. They still cannot use PowerPoint. We're talking about digital literacy, and we are not just talking about coding. We are talking about they being able to even utilize their mobile phones. These young people are using iPhone 12 and iPhone 14, iPhone 13, and all they can do is just take pictures of themselves and post. Meanwhile, we have women who are into businesses and they do not know that they can use the power of social media or leverage social media to scale their innovations or scale their businesses. And so we need to be able to equip educators to be well and capable enough to be able to integrate technology in their curriculum. Then the last thing I'll talk about is developing a localized digital content so that we are able to provide access to digital services even to the rural areas. From that child in a rural area to somebody in the urban area, we need to be able to ensure that our content, is localized so that when they all meet together, they would still be at the same scale. So at this point, we are talking about equity, fair distribution. Doesn't matter where you are. If you are in the local area, if you are in the rural area, we still have content that would help you, content that would help enhance your skills in tech. And somebody in the urban area will do same. And this is why most Ghanaians leave Ghana, go to other African countries, and they are unable to perform. Most of them have access to jobs. They go there and they do not perform because there's still a wide skills gap. And so I believe that if we're able to have reliable data, it's affordable. We are providing young people with the tools and infrastructure, and then we are building the capacity of educators to integrate tech in their curriculum and also localizing our digital content. It would go a long way to help their digital ecosystem.
Thank you so much, Aja. Those were very, very interesting points there. My favorite part was people having all these smartphones and they really don't know what to do with them,
Right.
except taking pictures. Winnie, let me come to you. Let's talk about strengthening digital literacy skills to benefit, an education-hungry population. People want to learn. People want to know. So how do we strengthen their digital literacy skills so all the things we are saying and doing can benefit these same people we want to empower?
Okay, I think both ladies have kind of answered that in
Okay.
different ways.
Yeah.
So basically, the first thing is access to the network.
Okay.
I think we've spoken about that
Yeah.
at limits.
Mhm.
So basically, connectivity. So that's one of the things. The next thing I believe is very important is just accessible technology, having that smartphone in your hand. So it's not just, as was said by Adra, having it, but it's still required. It's a necessity, right? Without it, what do you do? The next thing, as you said earlier, we need to have it in the curriculum, right, Amma? We need to have it in the curriculum. Without it in the curriculum, students will be learning on their own, as I said, on YouTube, and you don't necessarily know what they are learning there. So unless you have it in the curriculum, you are guiding students. But please, let's update it. Let's not be teaching people like Microsoft 95 in 2023. Because that's, to me, still a struggle. It's not okay to say it's in the curriculum, and it's so outdated that even though you come to help your child and they say, okay, how do I save? You have to say Control S because you can't even remember where it was that the teacher is now teaching about because you're not using that version anymore.
Okay.
So it's about actually not just having it in the curriculum, but it being up to date, as Amma also said earlier. So, and the teacher training, like it's super important. So with teacher training, right? So, because it's the teachers who have to now come and give this curriculum. If they're not in the know, if they're not on the cutting edge to be able to impart it, the students also won't listen because they'll have a little thing in their head and they're like, what this teacher is coming to teach me is not necessarily up to date. So they'll be less interested. And then community centers. Let's not forget the importance of just having a local community center that you can go and do your homework. You can go and research something. We are also seeing a lot of tech hubs giving those supports now as well. So I went to WA recently to Noni Hub. Noni Hub is so with Ayoba, we have accelerators every year. And we're working and partnering a lot with the tech hubs because we want to support, as I said, the ecosystem. And when I went to Noni Hub, I realized that they had training in like hardware, like building different things. And they were also working with the schools. So even though they're a tech hub and you think they should only be helping entrepreneurs, they're also working with schools in the neighborhood. So having those centralized places where people can go, get access to information, access to training, and just like-minded people to support them. So everyone doesn't have to have a mobile device, even though that's our purpose at MTN, to have everyone to have access to a modern connected life. But you can also have that through these centers or schools, opening up those schools and the labs that they have there to people in the community. These are also ways that I believe can support.
Great. Let me get back on the line. Let me speak to Adjoa. Adjoa, let's talk about the digital literacy and skills action plan. So question 1, do we have one? Question 2, should we be thinking of one if we don't? And what importance will such a plan hold? As we talk about some of the pathways we've mentioned to strengthen digital literacy as we want to implement it as a country.
Okay, so I think we have one, but then it needs to be looked into carefully.
Okay.
And then I think that we should consider implementing this plan. I'm not sure that of the implementation aspect, but I think that if we do have one, then we should consider its implementation. And then this plan must encompass strategies for improving internet access, like we talked about. We've talked about the challenges and the issues when it comes to accessing internet and even affordability. So in this particular plan, it should encompass access to internet access, and then teacher training, as my ladies already spoke about, and also the curriculum development, and throwing more light on that revised curriculum. As she said, we don't want to still be using, backdated stuff. We want to ensure that we are using something in the present that would help, be able to equip them to meet up with the future of work, and also partnership with both public and private sectors. And so I am excited about, the government now looking into how they can be able to work with some of the tech hubs. The Ministry of Communications over the past years has been working with the Ghana Hubs Network, most of the hubs, including Women TV in Africa, where I work from, to be able to support young people. And I think that some of these partnerships would go a long way. She talked about Noni Hub, who is also a part of the Ghana Hubs Network. And then for about 3 years, we supported thousands of young people to be digitally inclined in the areas of digital marketing, digital media, different aspects of digital education. So I believe that such partnerships will go a long way, and this action plan must have aspects of that in there so that we are able to ensure the successful integration of digital literacy into our education. So if it is there, then we are looking at the implementation, and we are looking at how this action plan would help us solve all of the challenges that we have talked about. Yes.
All right, thank you so much. Amma, let me bring you in. Let's talk about e-learning. These days is gradually becoming part of what we do thanks to COVID. So how can we leverage the capacity of schools or educational institutions at all levels to accelerate digital literacy and digital skills?
Okay, thank you so much for that. Like you said, e-learning has come to stay. Even though COVID is gone, e-learning is still, COVID is not gone, but e-learning has come to stay and it's become a part of it. Meltwater has this report that it publishes every year. I look forward to it every year.
I see.
It's called the Data Reportal, and it has the digital reports for every country in the world, right?
Okay.
And Ghana, right now, I think Winnie is here.
I'll ask her the next question.
For cellular mobile connections, I think we have 44 million. And I know that almost a lot of Ghanaians have at least 2 phones, right? So trying to provide a digital device for a student per school might be very, very expensive, right? So why don't we just leverage on the fact that people actually use mobile phones and optimize the learning platforms to be mobile phone friendly?
Okay.
Right. And also I was just thinking about people in the rural areas that don't have smartphones, what do we do with them? I know that the farmers use USSD
and SMS,
right? So is there a way that we can collaborate with the telcos, education can collaborate with telcos to allow people in the rural areas to access digital knowledge through that, because not everybody has a smartphone, right? And also another thing that we can leverage is internet. Data is expensive, and I don't know if you've done e-learning before. Videos are very heavy. You need a lot of gigabytes for videos, right? So one of the things that we did at ALX was that we realized that online people are complaining that, it's very expensive, the data that we are using. So we created hubs across Africa that people can come and collaborate and have access to the internet. So that's one way that we have done it. And also is there a possibility that we can still collaborate with the telcos? Okay, so for educational institutions, is it possible to have subsidized internet packages, like special internet packages? I know there was this time that you could actually use Facebook for free on MTN. There was a time like that, right? So is it possible that we could do all these things together, right? And I think the last one is, let's not allow the in e-learning for us to make us forget the Asian human.
Okay.
One thing we realized about something we realized at ALX was that when people are isolated, I'm talking about higher learning where you are on by yourself learning, nobody's with you, you're online. People tend to give up easily. People need support. If you add online support, if you had peer support, and if you add community, we realized our retention rates were higher when we added these things. So as much as we also focusing on e-learning, let's not forget the human aspect of it.
Okay. All right. Great. Winnie, Amma mentioned.
She answered my question.
Yeah, I was actually going to get your thoughts on some of the learnings or some of the things we have learned as a country, and things that we are applying from other countries in accelerating digital literacy for education.
So, to answer that, I feel like I have to borrow half of what you just said. So what other countries are doing, as she said earlier, is that they're leveraging content online.
Okay.
So starting from the highest level, master's level, degree level, all of those things, you don't have to enter a classroom anymore. Most of the times you don't even have to meet a lecturer. The content is already structured. The content is already there. You're just going in at your own pace, learning between your work schedule and everything. So that's some of the things I feel that has been done very well outside.
Okay.
That there's no need for going in to speak with anyone, apart as long as you pay your fees. You can go into. As you come down, what they're teaching now, as we said earlier, is about robotics and AI. And like, we had an intern coming to MTN last month, and I was asking the different interns. So we have people from Aseshi, we have people from University of Legon, and then one of my interns, I asked her what she was studying, and she said neuroscience. And I was like, neuroscience. How does that relate to computer science? How does that relate to digital? And we started to have that conversation. So what we're finding out that outside, they're not just thinking, oh, I need to study computer science to do computer science. I'm studying how the brain works, how people learn, and they're then using that information to do even development, to do even coding. So I think we also have to look at how do we do a lot more cross-functional learning in what we're doing. So coming down again another level, as I said, it's good to have these robotics classes in the schools, like the secondary schools. However, it's so limited. How can we expand that to digitally? So like a lot of things, they have the small pieces, but once the club is full, the club is full. So how is it that we've started and we're doing the right things, but we just need to do it on a grander scale? I think is really where my answer lies. It's not that we're not doing it. We know what to do. We've seen it. We've all traveled. However, to do it on the scale that it needs to be done, to have the impact we need to have, then we go back to those partnerships that we need to have, not just between schools and hubs and telcos, but how do we work together for the future generations?
Great. Still listening to EdTech Monday, the September edition. Our topic for this morning is accelerating digital literacy to benefit education systems. My guests are still here. They've not gone anywhere. I have Amma Saki, Growth and Marketing Lead, ALX Ghana, Adjoa Fosuwa Owusu-Fori, Executive Director, Women's Haven Africa, and Winnie Jidonu, Senior Manager, Digital Platforms, MTN Ghana. We'll take a quick vox pop. We'll be hearing from Amma Datsun, who's founder and CEO of Ako Books. She also gave us her take on this topic. Accelerating digital literacy to benefit education systems in Ghana. And when we come back, we'll try and wrap up our conversation. I'll take a few more thoughts from Adjoa, Amma, and Winnie, and we'll call it a morning. So coming up next is Amma Datsun, founder and CEO of Ako Books Limited.
Hello, I'm Amma Datsun, founder and CEO of Ako Books Audio, Ghana's first publisher of and a digital streaming platform for Black African audiobooks, ebooks, and spoken word. I'm a computer programmer by background. My passion has always been how can we use technology to improve people's lives. So starting my service as a way to find blind and visually impaired access to books was how I got the inspiration for my company. However, if you just think back to how you learned to read, for most of us, chances are learning to read involved a book. Whether it was a book that you had from childhood at school or a teacher or a library. However, so many Ghanaians and Africans are going around with mobile phones and using them as sources for information. So naturally, I thought, put books on our mobile devices and get people reading more. So lack of access to books is one of our major barriers to literacy on the continent. You may be familiar with or have heard the recent pronouncement from the Minister of Education, who said the shocking statistic that only 38% of primary children in class 2 are able to read. Lack of access to books is one of those problems, and this is what we really hope that our platform will be able to provide access to. Books are essential on the path to literacy, and they're also important for opening up other opportunities in people's lives, like education, employment, and even participation in society. But the lack of access to books is a major barrier to literacy, and it's a huge problem. So our platform provides access 24/7 to a rich catalog of African books, which we then help to make reading affordable, convenient, and fun. During the COVID, many parents and learners could no longer access books and reading materials in their schools. We have three main goals with our platform, AquaBooks audio platform, targeted at students and learners, parents and teachers, and then also African publishers. So for the students, our main goal is to promote the use of mobile phones as reading and learning tools in our African communities, and then also to get a richer, more engaged experience with reading. We're very proud of our partnership with MTN Ayoba, which helps us to provide so many readers an introduction to African literature and books that they may not have come across. For the publishers, we are encouraging them to try multi-format printing. We wanted to provide a platform where you could discover African literature and get closer to your African heritage. One of the major problems with digital reading is that it's a new habit. We also face competition from a lot of other digital streaming activities. Young people are used to playing games, watching movies, listening to music, betting. All these things are taking the attention away from reading. And so that habit of listening to books or reading, making more time for reading, is gone. And students are aware of the value of reading. They appreciate it intellectually, but there are lots of competing factors for their money and their time. So that's one of our major factors. Finally, in schools, we still have a way to go with digital technology and digital platforms being used in schools. So our way out of, or our solution to deal with these issues was to form partnerships. And these partnerships and relationships with other people have really helped us to get our books out. We're proud of our partnership with MTN Ayoba. The Ayoba channel is 0 rated for data. The content available on there is free. So we have a community that has rapidly grown from 1,000 paying customers to 190,000 listeners. We also partner with other organizations like World Reader, which is a fantastic NGO that's dealing with providing ebooks on mobile phones. We've been looking at them to see how we can tap into their already existing network in schools and their approaches to getting children to read more and read effectively on mobile devices. In addition, thanks to a partnership that we had with MasterCard Foundation, who during 2020 set up a cohort for African EdTech companies, and we were fortunate to be one of the first 12 companies in that cohort, they helped us to look at how we can get some of the government stakeholder relationships deepened. The Ministry of Education has a partnership with UNICEF to deliver something called the National Digital Learning Passport. It's a program targeted at early literacy and numeracy for primary schools. We're happy to have a partnership with SendLoss to contribute some audiobooks to be part of that National Learning Passport. And so these relationships have really helped us to get our books out. We are closely aligned to United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, particularly to SDG 4, quality education, SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, and SDG 11, partnerships. We are an African company. We have a focus on African books, African writings, and African indigenous knowledge. So we work solely with African writers and African publishers. We're growing this audiobook industry, which is actually is becoming has an important place in the creative African economy. So we provide work for opportunities for actors, mostly from film and theater, and provide them new sources of revenue. So far, about 60% of our narrators are women, so we're very proud of being able to provide women new sources of work. Of course, we are also making revenue and providing new sources of digital income for the authors and the publishers.
So that was Amma Datsun, founder and CEO of Akko Books Limited. Great insight into what they are doing. They're into audiobooks. Wonderful stuff. You're still listening to EdTech Monday. My guests are still here. And they are, for those who may not have caught the conversation from the beginning, Amasaki, Growth and Marketing Leader, ALX Ghana, Ajua Fosua Wusofori, Executive Director, Women's Haven Africa, and Winnie Jidonu, Senior Manager, Digital Platforms, MTN Ghana. Let's wrap it up. We don't have too much time. We've got to run through our questions. So let me take Ajua and Ama's thoughts on what other approaches we can possibly explore to grow an understanding of digital literacy and then its importance in accelerating education outcomes. Maybe we can quick fire responses because of time. Fine. So maybe Ama, you first, and then we speak to Ajua.
Okay, I'll go back to awareness.
Okay.
Right. I'll go back to awareness, and I would also say that there has to be collaboration between media houses, academia, industry, educators, like everybody. Let's just come together and create the awareness. Let people know the relevance, the importance. Let people know the kind of career opportunities that are even available. You know, it helps to increase the understanding of what we're talking about. Yeah.
Wonderful. Ajua, if you can hear me, same question to you. Maybe keep it quite brief. What other approaches we can explore in terms of digital literacy and its importance in accelerating education outcomes?
Yes. So I think that from the policy aspect, I am looking at more partnerships between the government and then private companies to ensure that we're able to build something sustainable for the nation. Also, beyond that, we are looking at some projects by the government. You know, initially we're talking about some other things happening or policies happening in other countries that we can actually pick up from. And I think that one of the best examples is what Singapore is doing with their strategic national projects, where they are, you know, putting together e-payment systems, smart urban mobility, the Go business, national digital identity, so on and so forth, which I believe that if our nation or our government is also looking into that area, is going to go a long way to help all of us. Also, we can come up with some digital programs, you know, like the Digital Code Week, the Digital Week celebration, several other initiatives that will actually drive more people to be aware of, you know, the digital literacy campaign, you know, the awareness around the nation. We also have some initiatives like the, you know, 1D1F in Ghana, which aims to create digital hubs in each district to actually promote digital literacy
Okay.
among students and farmers. We need more of these initiatives to be able to drive the digital ecosystem.
All right, Adra, thank you so much. My final question is for my in-studio guests, Winnie and Amma. What role can other stakeholders like the telcos, internet providers, and all of these things, what can they do, or what role can they play in growing digitally literate young Ghanaians for better experiences in education?
Okay, so definitely what we can do is 3 to 4 things. One is connectivity, providing access to the internet so that you can actually use it. The second thing is access to devices. I've said earlier, with all the devices, you can have internet all you want, right? So the next thing, and how to use those devices.
Okay.
So one of the things we do, as I said in store, is when you buy the device, we kind of help you out in learning how to use it. So that's one of the things that we feel is very important. And the last thing is services.
Okay.
So there's, and I spoke about that also earlier, having educational services, Aku Books. We've partnered with Aku Books for some time now. For audiobooks, you can access them through Ayoba. She provides like free books there in her channel. So giving those 3 things: access to the internet, access to devices, and then access to services. And as I said earlier, for Ayoba, it's free to use on an MTN network. So that allows, so you will remove that challenge of, okay, the content is there, but I can't access it. And what we do as a platform is that it allows anyone with a web product to be on that platform, and their content also becomes zero-rated. So we do a lot of partnerships with educational institutions and educational institutions and educational solutions that want to provide reach for their information, that they can put it on Ayoba or zero-rate their products.
Okay.
So those are the things that we believe that we can bring to the table.
Amma, you get the final word.
Oh, that's nice. So we've spoken about everybody, but we haven't spoken about parents, the people who actually have the influence on learners and students. So I think that one of the ways that we can do that is get parents to encourage their children to get some form of digital literacy.
Okay.
And also, even the parents are the ones that will provide the digital devices and the internet. So parents.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So parents are important. We don't talk a lot about them, but they are very, very key in all of this. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to the September edition of EdTech Monday. My name is Nathan Kwai. I moderated the session. My guest, and I had a powerful panel today. I had Amasaki, Growth and Marketing Lead, ALX Ghana. I had Adjoa Fosua Owusu-Ofori, Executive Director of the Women's Haven Africa. And I had Winnie Jidonu, Senior Manager, Digital Platforms, MTN Ghana. Many, many thanks to you for listening. We appreciate the time